Hi, good evening. I'm Kathy Vaness. You're all here with me tonight at Golden Door. You are not on camera. We have 2 cameras in the room that we'll be filming tonight. I'm so happy to be here with Leah Weinraub, an innovative pioneer in the world of personal transformation. As an internationally acclaimed speaker, entrepreneur, author, and competitive athlete, Lee helps people unlock their inner strength to become their own greatest champions. She rose from one of America's top junior tennis players to a scholarship athlete to the coach of Dartmouth and Northwestern University. After earning, did we know that? No, that's news, right? That's cool. After earning her master's degree in counseling psychology from Northwestern, she built a thriving practice using her innovative walk and talk therapy. We're going to look at a little bit at that tonight. Springing from her passion for helping others create a destiny of their choosing, today Lee is the founder of Mind in Motion. I love this product because it sort of speaks to you all day, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, and it's in our boutique. You can see it. This is a universal movement and lifestyle brand. In addition to speaking, she started a creative apparel line that motivates people to get off the couch. And don't we all need that sometimes, even myself, even though I'm here. So welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to ask you.
Can't believe we made it.
I know,
we
from
made
every
it
place we came,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you once said, a walk brings certain things to light, especially when you're alone. The world becomes a mirror. It doesn't matter if you're staring into trees, hills, or oceans. We encourage, and here at Golden Door, we encourage our guests to walk all the time. One of our most important walks, and I hope you get to do it, is the meditation hike. Who's been on that meditation hike? A couple people. Oh, yeah, it is really very nice, isn't it? It's very peaceful, and it's one of the things we do. And I want you to explain to me, how do we get people to understand that walking is more than just energy and exercise? It's actually healthy for your mind and your soul.
So just to back up and explain how I started this whole walking thing, I had a lifetime of playing sports, and I solved a lot of my mental struggles and tension through smacking yellow fuzzy tennis balls. And so I always knew that motion was one of the ways that I could sort of release. I didn't understand the science to it, but I knew that I felt better after I ran around on a tennis court and sweat. And then when I studied psychology and I studied super traditional Freudian psychoanalytic theory, lay on a couch, talk a lot about your feelings, a lot about the past, and I think that that is a brilliant study and theory, and Northwestern was an amazing program. I realized that sitting in an office was not necessarily as helpful for people to sort through some of their problems. So a couple months into doing this, I decided I was working with a client who had a lot of anxiety, and her foot would shake a lot in the session, and I could tell she needed to move. So I was in Chicago, it was all of 10 degrees, and I looked at this woman and said, grab your coat, we're gonna get out of here, we're gonna take a walk. And I knew within 10 minutes of that walk, this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to take people out just simply to move their bodies, to solve some of their mental problems. Self-consciousness kind of drifted away. It was an organic process. Just by lacing our sneakers up and getting out there and being in motion, people felt like they were doing something to solve the problem. Tons of research shows movement can improve your mood and reduce your anxiety. And outdoors, when you're seeing different landscapes, seeing different visuals actually helps your brain solve problems from different perspectives, because you're literally seeing different perspectives.
Are you seeing some kind of a relationship between becoming maybe more mindful and kind to yourself in those moments to longevity?
Absolutely. And there's tons of science to back up that just being outside, moving your body, burning calories, releasing endorphins, can add years to your life, obviously improve your health.
And
but
happiness.
I think more, oh my God, immensely. This whole mindfulness movement, it can be explained many different ways. I speak a lot about mindfulness. So much of being in a moment and being present and being in the here and now is, I think, appreciating that you live in a body. It's that you're eating this meal and you're paying attention on a tennis court to staring at the ball, or you're paying attention in yoga to your belly rising. Every single thing that you're doing that heightens sensory appreciation is in turn being present and being a mindful person.
You know, I wonder if, because we're going to live so much longer, you know, we used to live, maybe 60s or 50s, and, you know, women had children and then they moved on. Because we're going to live to hundreds, our children will certainly be living into the hundreds. Are we putting too much pressure on ourselves in the sense that we have to be so perfect? Does that hurt mindfulness too, inside ourselves? You know what I mean?
I think in general,
You know what I
the
mean?
expectation to be perfect is never a good
Impossible.
thing.
And we're going to get older, and stuff is going to happen. It's going to fall and change and move and shake, and we should be thankful that we're going to be 100, but we're not going to be the 100 that we were at 40.
Another reason why walking is a very
Yes.
sustainable thing to do that's
Yes.
manageable.
Yes.
But yes, I think that there's a problem with perfectionism and not good enoughness for
Well,
sure.
do we ever think that marketing is going to change, that it won't always show us people who are not real?
I hope it does, and I hope I move the needle on that in the smallest way that I can.
Well, anybody can,
Yeah.
you can. Perfect segue. What does self-reflection actually mean? And how do we apply it on a daily basis if we're all pulled in a million directions? How do we stop and think about ourselves? We have to think about everybody else.
I think, like you just said, it's honoring the process of pausing, which I don't know about you guys, but in today's world we're so bombarded, and we're always saying we're busy, and we're feeling busy, and we're looking on our phones, and we have so many responsibilities. Just honoring the pause is step number one to reflection. I do a lot of provocative asking of questions, because I think that the second layer of reflection is taking the time to ask very difficult questions.
So what's an example of one?
So one of the questions that I ask in almost all of my talks, and I think that the answer to this question has generated more and more material for me as a therapist and a speaker, is imagine that you are having a conversation with the 100-year-old version of you. You are talking to that very, very wise woman, and she gets to teach you something right now in your life. What does that wise woman tell you right now?
Wow, that's good. Wow, is that causing everybody to think of that 100-year-old woman and what she would say?
It's a great question.
It's a great question.
And interestingly, I've been sort of collecting the data. Number one answer I hear is don't sweat the small stuff. Something like don't sweat the small stuff. Stop worrying so much. Another theme I hear, and it's amazing to me, I'll be looking at people who have seemingly good lives, and they'll say, just enjoy the moment. Like, learn how to enjoy the moment, stop and smell the roses. True. I've heard that from hundreds of thousands of people, that answer. And then something in the be authentic, spend more time with family and friends, be true to yourself. But all of these themes, that begins a whole nother layer of more questioning. Like, who are you? Who do you want to be? I remember when I first started speaking, I have this very unique way of, I blast music, but I have people journal. And the first question I started asking was, who are you? And then I would keep asking, who are you really? Who are you? And initially people would look at me when I would ask the question, and they would be like, I don't even know where to begin. And many people blew the exercise off because they found it too intense. But after a while, when you get people to really stop and really reflect, pause from the madness, get off the crazy treadmill, and they're like, who am I? And then getting them to ask, who do you want to be? The core of motivation, if you do not get a person to think about their identity and who they want to become, you will never help them motivate themselves.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You know, we have one of the conversations here. I'd love to give your perspective. When you think about where you are in life, one of the lessons we have, and I want everybody, all our guests, to think about it while they're here, is we look at these different parts of our property, whether it be from the koi pond or from the upper labyrinth out. We look and we see this raw hill over here. And we look to see a live koi pond where there's a world that's a special world. It's their world. And it's alive every single day. And sometimes you're not really looking into the koi pond and how the fish are actually living. You're actually gazing beyond the koi pond. And you're probably actually gazing on beyond that, because most gazes go beyond what's in front of you. So the lesson we try to share is, and I want to see how you would tell them, is you're missing what's right here in front of us now. We're right here, hearing, smelling, sniffing. Why are we on an empty mountain over there? Why are we worried so much about the future when the current time is all here? How do we help people actually make that a practice?
How long do you want this series? Like, when am I coming back for that
one?
one?
Thing, I think that would be really important.
I would reduce like 90% of the work that I do to be around this issue, and I probably don't have the time to answer that. But I would say the human brain is not designed to be present. It's not naturally designed to be present. So in the span of a day, the average human brain is just swirling with upwards of 80,000 thoughts. And very unfortunately, for all sorts of evolutionary reasons, our brains love to replay the past. Shoulda, woulda, coulda, if only I had done this back then, I screwed this up. And we will beat ourselves up, even the highest functioning, healthiest people, beat ourselves up about what we didn't do or what we screwed up, and we will lose sleep over that. And then just when we're done with that, and we've mastered that, then we will jump to, well, what if this happens, and what if this happens, and what if this happens? And the brain will ruminate on the future, because this is natural, and this is a normal thing that the human brain does. And then we notice that when we go to the future, we start feeling anxious. And so we're living between the spaces of darkness and anxiety. In general, those are very vague terms. And it's because it's not a natural thing to do, you have to train the brain. Just like in sports, you had to train, you had to have lots of reps, lots of practice. You have to literally train your brain to tangibly practice what it means to be present. I will tell you, I live a busy life, but the minute I walked through the Golden Door, I was like, oh my God, I've never really noticed trees like I just did, and I haven't smelled smells like that. But the minute I started smelling smells, tasting the texture, feeling the texture of the food, all of those things that I am noticing in a sensory way are making me savor the present moment.
Interesting.
And I do all sorts of training with getting people on how to practice this presence, how to get in the body.
I think that's more important than we've all talked about. We talk about mindfulness, we talk about lots of things, walking, quiet, but there's something about actually appreciating this next half hour, this next hour, this next day, this next minute, because we're here all now doing this, and I think that feels peaceful.
It's a complicated concept as well, and this is just my opinion, only my opinion. You need the past to inform the growth for the future. So you kind of do need to think about the past. You have to be present-minded about the past to make the tweaks on the kind of future you want. You have to spend time thinking about the future you want, but that requires reflection and pause versus spiraling out of control and then distracting yourself on a phone or a computer and avoiding. It requires the reflective process. It requires that walk and talk in nature to think about the past and create the future that you want and then go do something about it in the present moment.
Do you imagine your future?
Yes, and oftentimes with anxiety attached to it. Sure.
How do you imagine your future?
That's a great question. I think a lot about my family and a lot about my personal life and making sure that I have an element of balance, and that brings me the most fulfillment and joy, and really honoring that. You know that I started an apparel company, and that has become an all-consuming passion for me. And in the midst, and this is a whole other conversation, but in the midst of this development of this apparel company and this lifestyle brand, I have become very passionate about the Blanket Project. And when I think about my future in terms of my professional future, I want my legacy to be that I wrapped countless patients in my blanket.
Why don't you share the Blanket Project with our guests? It's a great project.
You'll see the apparel line because a lot of it is here, and you'll probably see me wearing it. I started back in the day when I was coaching and doing therapy, and I kept telling people, look within. You have the answers. I don't have your answers. I started writing words upside down on my students' clothing, and I sort of became known as the coach who writes these upside down words. And somehow, divine fate, someone saw this idea and said, I think this is a really cool idea and you should start a business. And I was like, I don't know anything about clothing. And that will bring me to Kathy. And next thing you know, we, after a fun night, decided, let's sign up for a trade show and let's make some t-shirts. We made some shirts, we signed up for a trade show, it went really well. And so within about 2 years, I started designing clothing, all with actionable verbs that I thought, like, all my clients are telling me this, all of my students, they want to breathe, but they always forget. They know they should, but they forget. You need reminders. They want to move. They want to get up off the couch. They want to practice gratitude instead of complaining. They want to focus more. So I chose all these words. I started this clothing company. And in the midst of this, as I saw people were really connecting, they were resonating with the idea of the simple upside down word, I wanted to take the idea of looking within and positivity to people who were most vulnerable, and cancer patients kind of tugged at my heart. And so I designed a blanket with a manifesto that I wrote that is incredibly powerful about optimism and strength and courage, and ended up sort of aligning with some different cancer organizations, and I met a couple of amazing people who supported this, and it's called The Blanket Effect. And the bottom line mission is to get every person who is facing cancer wrapped in these words. And this has become, we're very involved with the mental health world now, wrapping people who are facing mental health struggles, which is becoming extremely common. And this is, when I think about my future, that is what I want to make an impact around. But I can't help but want to tell the story of how I met you at the apparel. I'll say it briefly. So Kathy had heard about my company, and my business partner and I, Karen, we were working it really hard to get a meeting at the Golden Door. And so we finally get a meeting with Kathy. And we booked the tickets, and we're so excited, and we're like walking through the airport with our wardrobe bags. We are going to meet Kathy Van Ness. So we get there, we roll into the conference room, we're feeling really good. We're rolling out the clothing, and Kathy says, "Can I see the shirt?" And we're like, "Sure, yeah, check the shirt out." And Kathy says, "Do you mind if I do something?" And we're like, "Have at it. You take the shirt." So she takes the shirt and she rips the shirt. Literally rips the shirt. She's very strong. And she said, this quality is not acceptable for the Golden Door. I think she may have said, "Yeah, take it to Target or something." To which I looked at my business partner and thought, don't cry, don't cry. Long story short, we left the meeting. And on that plane ride home, we were like, we are going to make this happen, and we are going to listen to Kathy. And instead of taking it personally, I stayed in touch with Kathy. We raised our game, we changed our manufacturers, we created amazing new material. And a couple months ago, we sent Kathy a pack, and we were like, here you go. and we made a shirt that said the word commit, and then Kathy called me and said, come to the Golden Door.
All right, it's cute. How can we, there you go. Now you have a little quiet story, a little secret story here that no one would know. How can we recognize what we're truly capable of and find the motivation to act on it? You recognize what you were really, how did you find that motivation when you had to make this sort of career decision? To go out and do fashion is not easy.
I think from the very beginning of my life, I sort of always followed, I guess, my heart. I always, I guess, maybe had some sort of internal pull to do what I loved. So initially it was tennis. Like that was the thing that made my heart sing. And then I studied psychology. That was, again, like a very authentic calling for me, that this is what I knew I wanted to do. When I created the apparel company, and it will forever be that I am driven to get people to look within. The whole entire core of the company is the philosophy of waking the world up to looking inside of themselves and having internal validation and having an internal locus of control. It's always how I think I've been motivated. If you look at motivation in general, emotion is what drives people. And I guess I've always been the kind of person who, like, I want to push myself. I hate when I get caught up in externals. And the apparel company was just sort of an offshoot from, I want to motivate myself and others to rely more on internal drive than
So thinking
externals.
about that, so think about your wanting to drive other guests, other consumers. Talk about how you do that through active mindfulness. Talk about active mindfulness. What does that mean to our guests?
So I was getting a little bit into this idea that my definition, this might run contrary to a lot of spa terminology. I talk actually more about bodyfulness than mindfulness. I think that when people say that they want to be more mindful, they want to have a calm come over them. They want to get out of the chaos. How I teach, which is really mindlessness by being bodyful, is learning how to get back in the body. And so for me, it was taking a walk and feeling the air on my face and the sun beating down, or the smells in the air, or even feeling the momentum of bodies, shoulder to shoulder, step to step, your leg muscles, and everything about it was body-centric. It was very somatic. And I think when people are looking for, and I get asked all the time, come to my company or come to my group to talk about mindfulness. And I'm always like, okay, but it's going to be a unique approach to it. I think people are looking for a sense of connection between their mind and their body. And they do this by being appreciative of having a sensory experience. I actually teach, my new classes that I teach are mindful wine tasting and mindful whiskey
nice.
tasting.
Mindful
and,
facials.
Uh,
I'd be surprised. But wait a second. We have been talking about mindfulness now for long time, right? Mindfulness is something we've talked about a long time. Are we as a society getting more kind and mindful?
I'm going to give society the benefit of the doubt that
Do you
maybe...
think it's just that most of society is sort of taking the break to be mindful?
I think that there's a lot of...
Because we're all going to be here together a long time.
I think that there's, I mean, we can get into a whole conversation with lots of dots being connected, but I think one of the things that bothers me personally is the social media universe. While there's a lot of positive connection, social media and technology has very much taken us away from connection. I mean, like when you're scrolling and scrolling, you're very disconnected. Your mind and body are not one. You're kind of numb and you're checked out. And I think in general that has been on the rise, thus making us less personally mindful. And if you are less personally mindful, you're not going to be very interpersonally mindful. So when you do these mindfulness practices, the goal is connect to yourself, attach your mind back to your body and love that, fill yourself up so you're like all of a sudden now restored, you've gone to the golden door, you've had all these sensory experiences, you are intact as a unit. And then you're hanging out with your family again and you are interpersonally mindful. Do I think that we're doing a good enough job of that societally? No.
No. Let's take the simple part of a dinner. In the Golden Door, dinner is at 6:30, 6:45 after you finish Amusé, and you come into the dining room, and you have this unique opportunity with no agendas to make, not friends, but acquaintances with people who you can talk to about anything. It's not an agenda, it's not a friend, it's someone who's here for the same reasons that you're here, and you're enjoying learning about their choices of life. But would you have had all your neighbors over to do that for dinner?
No, and that's a great example that
We would not. And are we missing that? How do we get back to that where we were having all our neighbors over for Sunday brunch or dinner? Will we ever?
I hope we get back to something like that. I think going back to reflection, it strikes me, and I don't have the answer. If I did, I'd be doing something to solve it, or at least I'm trying to solve it, is why? What is it that's driving so much intense chaos? What is it that's making people be so busy and having such existential sort of misappropriation of energy that we're not doing that? Because if I asked 100 people, and I ask people this all the time, is this more rewarding to you? Would you rather look into the eyes of a human being and have this really thoughtful, connected experience? 100 out of 100 would say, yes, I love that.
I was just going to say,
so
absolutely.
Why are we not doing this?
Absolutely, 100 out of 100.
And it kind of gets back to like the idea of perfection and enoughness and competition and a striving out of, like, maybe it's insecurity, a lot of fear. If you get to the core of humanity problems, it's always fear. And so we get up to all this crazy stuff to try to shield the fear and fight the fear and defend from the fear. There's got to be a deep fear going on for people to be doing all of these chaotic behaviors to not align to other humans. And I think there are leaders out there who are waking people up and saying, come on, this is more rewarding.
I think so.
And I
tried something different this year. I made a New Year's resolution to have a dinner party and invite 4 couples, which would be 8 people who never heard of each other, ever. Ever. Never met each other, never heard of each other, were completely from different walks of life, different beliefs, different everything, and have them for dinner. I think they were all a little nervous at first, but when they came for dinner and sat down, they wanted to know why they had never done it before. It was actually very interesting to watch the group start the early conversations, and then, as happens at dinner here, right? The later conversations. As you're together for 7 days, by Sunday, we're pretty close. So a question, talk a little bit about talk therapy. Talk to me, what is talk therapy? I love that.
In general, it's probably
therapy.
more of a traditional approach to that. You've got all these feelings and thoughts that are sort of swirling inside of you, and there's a ton of science to back up that just sharing what is going on in your internal world and just talking it out actually is incredibly therapeutic and can, if you have a shared empathic experience where you are talking to somebody and you feel like that person is actively, non-judgmentally listening, and you're just spewing it out your mouth, that actually can change your perspective and change your life.
Wow, that's pretty powerful.
Yeah. So, and I wholeheartedly believe in it. I think when you watch people who are stressed out and they just don't want to talk and they're avoiding, anything you can do to get them to get it out their mouth is going to be helpful.
How do you maintain your own calmness? What are your secret practices?
Number one, and I do a lot of walking for my living, but the number one thing I do when I know I need to be calm is I find peace in motion. I walk every single day. I feel like the first hour of my life I have to be in motion, and that sort of starts my day with a calmer way, a calmer sense. I don't think I'm wired to be super calm. I probably am wired for more action and neuroses.
That's some of us.
I do some deep breathing. I'm pretty conscious of rhythmic breathing. I have done a lot of training and studying in sort of somatic therapy, somatic coaching. I'm very aware of my body, and like I put my brain in my body and I do things that I know are gonna help regulate me, but I don't do it perfectly.
So what's next?
Oh, what's next? I'm looking to align with more cancer organizations. Recently talking to a couple of companies about getting Airbnb to offer housing for people who are getting treatment and having our blankets there, and I hope that works out. But I'm gonna keep doing more of the same, only a more improved version of myself, and I'm loving what I'm doing.
Good.
I just wanna do.
I know everybody has hikes, so I'm always thoughtful about your all's times, but there's always the last question of the evening that's the most important question. And I hope while Lee's here, you spend some time with her and find out all her other secrets, because believe me, she has many. I've gotten to know her over the years. Every interview, we ask our special guest to give our guest a golden nugget. And so we're going to ask you tonight to give them your golden nugget for the evening that they could take home with them for their own families.
I'm going to give you the golden nugget code that I give to my clients every time that they're in darkness, and I'll text it to them and I'll remind them of it. And it's G2, and they know that when I say G2, it means whatever you're going through, however dark you feel, whatever anxiety, depression, and I have really difficult conversations around really tough topics. G2 means how can you grow from it, and how can you find gratitude, regardless. And if you can find growth and you can find gratitude, you can endure anything. I believe that wholeheartedly. So the golden door nugget is G2.